Namaste, namaste, and welcome to the 8 p.m. podcast. This is Yuvraj. You're watching Urben Pandits. This is podcast number 158, and the Pandit of the day today is Parag Bhalirauji. So, Jai Shri Ram, sir. How are you
Namaste.
doing?
I'm doing very good. Jai Shri Ram. Good morning, good evening, depending on where everybody is.
I am in Bharat right now, so of course it's almost the day is almost towards an end.
Almost over.
However, I hear it are right now in the East Coast of United States.
Yes.
So, how is the weather there first, and what time is it?
It is about 9:30 in the morning, and weather is nice. It is bright, but obviously very cold, being winter. So yeah, but it's nice.
So I remember the last time we were talking about your book in particular. You did tell me that you are a Pune resident. Pune is actually one of those cities for people who don't know. It doesn't really experience any extremes of climate. Not
Yeah,
extremely hot or cold. Um, However, where you are right now, I think it's going to be almost close to zero or sub-zero. How is
yeah,
that coping up of temperature difference and climate difference really work out?
yeah. It's interesting, right? Humans are very able to adapt to different situations, uh, environmental as well as otherwise. So yeah, over period of time, I have been here for a long time. So yeah, I was able to adapt and get along with the local conditions.
Sure, sure. This book, you had written. It's one of these, um, mind-shaking sort of books, which it's called The Creation of the Universe. It basically talks about the Purusha of our Vedic scriptures. It does define the nature of Purusha, and loads of things
Yeah,
around it. So this was a wonderful
thank you.
podcast. I do remember it was, I think, a couple of weeks back. So people who haven't watched that yet, I must recommend. Find that in the playlist of the channel. I'm sure you're going to get that. It's a wonderful one. Today, however, it's a different subject. We are going to be talking about Ramayana stories. It's obviously from when I picked up Ramayana, Paragji. It was uh, a few months back. And I wanted to specifically read Valmiki Ramayana because I hear that's the most authentic source of the story. Hmm?
Right, right.
I picked this up, and then while I'm reading through it, there are a lot of other stories that I had heard previously. I started reading this Valmiki, and I'm like, whoa, puzzles and threads are really opening up. But because of the fact it's such a vast story, you have to have that kind of memory to sort of remember almost everything from that, you know. So,
Right, right.
and because I think it's because of the fact it's so old and ancient. There's a saying, right? Beyond a point, even history becomes ancient, and when ancient becomes mythology. So it is on
Yeah,
that time scale. So obviously, I
yeah,
also think there's a lot of stories which got added to the story, to the main story of Valmiki, and then there could be, and we see that there are a lot of edits which happened to the story for whatever reasons.
correct,
Um,
correct. So
so
what happens is what you said just now. It's so interesting that history becomes ancient and ancient becomes mythology, and unfortunately, in our domain, in Indian history domain, intentionally, a lot of things were, promoted as mythology. And now, with so many communication channels available, with social media being very active, the information is available at fingertips for everybody. It is just that we have to, look for what we are looking for, what topics are of our interest, and the truth and the evidences and documentation, everything is available. So really happy about it in a way that we are able to grasp hold or get hold of right information or authentic information and not just rely on what is forced on us.
That's the point. That's the point. A few weeks back, or maybe I think a couple of months back, there was a story which was running around the social media about some Drishti IAS guy, some Buddha Kirti or something, had painted Bhagwan Ram in a misogynistic thing. The um, Sita post the war, how she had to go through this Agni Pariksha. So there's a lot of distortion basically happens when you don't know the story yourself, or when you don't know
Yeah.
or read the context of the story. So there are a few points. I got help from you too, and I've pointed this out right here. What we're going to discuss in this particular podcast is for all the people who may have read Ramayana or Valmiki Ramayana, or may not have. So there are a few things that I've painted it down here, like. Uh, Starting from Rishi Valmiki, who wrote this story himself. So there is an anecdote, and quite popular one, Paragji, that he was an Angulimal Daku in his past, and then later he became a Rishi, and such a renowned Rishi that he ended, writing this epic. So let me start
Right.
with this question: How much of truth is there to this story, and what do we know about it?
Okay, let's just one quick point for all the audience that Ramayana itself, as Yuvraj mentioned, is a huge topic. It's a really, really vast
Oh
topic,
yeah, oh
and
yes.
what we are going to do today is focus on only few specific stories. We are not going to, cover entire Ramayana. Obviously, that's not possible within practical time limits. So we'll just look at few stories which are very popular, and we'll try to understand what those popular stories are and what is really documented. Okay, so that is how what our focus is going to be a little bit. So, Yuvraj, can we share the slide deck?
Sure. Give me a moment.
Okay, perfect. I'm assuming I can flip the slides. Yeah. Okay. So these are some of the topics we will study. And the first topic right there is, Yuvraj, what you pointed out about Valmiki ji himself, right? So
The
yes, we
author
hear this
of the epic himself.
exactly, exactly. So yes, we hear a lot of stories that Sage Valmiki was a dacoit. He was whatever.
Okay, Paragji, I'm gonna hold you for a second, and I want to just tell the viewers a disclaimer that I really did not know about this slide show right now, and I had no idea that this is basically documented out here in the slide too. My
Okay,
question was totally extempore. Okay.
okay, awesome, awesome. That's great. They say that great minds think alike, right? That's what is going on, I guess.
Oh no
Uh,
no.
So, there are many stories that Sage Valmiki, he was a dacoit, and in a jungle, he used to loot people and things like that. And once he tried to loot Maharshi Narad, and Naradji then told him something, asked him to go and check with his family if they will partake in his sins and stuff like that. And eventually um recommended him or guided him to chant Ramanam. And by doing that for several years, he then eventually became a sage. That's the story that we hear. And again, in that story again there are different versions. Somewhere he is called Ratnakar, somewhere he is called Angulimal, somewhere he is called Valyakoli, and different flavors, different versions of the stories we keep on hearing. Now, if we really look at the evidences that are available, first of all, it's not possible. See, all these sages back then, they are very, very honest. So if they had something about their past, they would have clearly documented it. They would have clearly mentioned it. In Ramayana, there is no such mention about any such history about Maharshi Valmiki. Everywhere he is addressed very, very respectfully as a very thorough sage, very pious sage, and very respected person. And the names or the titles used for Valmiki is Maharshi, Bhagwan, Muni, so on and so forth, which clearly says that he was really a very, very accomplished sage. Also, as we know, Ramayana is the first known poem and history book in the history, right? I mean, there are literatures that are available before Ramayana era or before Valmiki Ramayana, but that those are not in as poetic format and structured poetic format as Valmiki Ramayana is. So we have to understand that we cannot just assume some stories over the period, some stories get built. And interestingly, there are some people who are, I will just say for the context, that they're followers of Maharshi Valmiki and they respect Maharshi Valmiki. They did some research and they filed a court case and provided all the evidences, and there was no evidence found up to 19th century, sorry, 9th century, which said anything about Maharshi being a dacoit or a daku or whatever words we want to use. So that was a story that was added later on, as there are so many other stories. We will see a few today, right? And then those became popular, and then we started believing in those and talking about those and teaching those and so on and so forth. Sometimes our intention might be right, and we'll see that in the next slide, next topic. Our intention might be to promote devotion, that if you are a really devoted person, even the worst person like a dacoit can become sage. Maybe that was the message we wanted to give, but in the process, we polluted the story, which was nowhere related to that aspect.
Okay, okay. You said something beautiful, and I would want to hold you there for a bit. And that was basically the essence of my question, also. Um, so you said this story got edited or fabricated later on, post ninth century. Is that what is right? So this introduction to Valmiki Rishi in the Ramayana itself doesn't find any mention of a dacoit or an
Absolutely.
Anguli Maldak who becoming somebody later on down the line, right? So what? So
Correct.
as per the Valmiki Ramayana, how is Valmiki Rishi introducing himself?
So the
Let's
beginning
just
of
get the
the
background of him from the Valmiki Ramayana and then move on to the next question.
so the Valmiki Ramayana starts with the reference of Valmiki being there, and he was observing a beautiful scenery. And during that time, somebody shot an arrow to a bird, and the bird fell down. And Maharshi Valmiki was very disturbed, and then he, give a shap to that person, and so that is where it starts. So it starts that he was a sage. It starts right from there. So there is no any reference of him being a dacoit or daku or any such thing.
Okay, so this whole story is just flawed. It just got added from somewhere. Do,
Yeah.
would you want to say where this story came from and got added to this
Honestly, I
introduction
have
of?
no,
No.
I have no
Okay.
clue. I mean, and that is not just for Valmiki's story, but so many other stories. I have no clue where those got added, who fabricated those, why they did that. they, they just
Interesting.
came there. Yeah.
Interesting. True. There's a beautiful narration of how this bird was killed and how he got, he said something and then Brahmaji came and said, "Whoa, wow, this is a beautiful way of putting the story in this chanda." And then the whole
Yeah.
Valmiki Ramayana was one word was written in that chanda, which is beautiful. Do you have anything more to say on the Valmiki subject, or should I move on to the next question?
We can move on. We can move on to the next topic. And just about Ramayana, I have a couple of points on the next slide, so we can just fire that real quick. So this is one area which might answer part of the question that you asked, Yuvrajji. So when we talk about Ramayana, there are multiple versions of Ramayana. And literally, I mean, I have listed a few, but that's not all. There are a lot more versions of Ramayana. And at a high level, I categorize those in two parts or two categories. One is the original Valmiki Ramayana, which is part of our Itihas literature. Right? Ramayana and Mahabharata are our Itihas Granthas. So Valmiki Ramayana is treated as a Itihas Grantha. But then there were a lot of devotees of Bhagwan Ramachandra, and they took the reference of Valmiki Ramayana and narrated their own stories or narrated that Valmiki Ramayana in their own way. And while doing that, they added few stories or few variations. Again, most of those were not added with any bad intent. It is just those are more like a devotional books, devotional granthas than history. So we cannot refer to them to find out or seek the truth about Ramayana. We can only refer to them as a devotional book, devotional composition. Like I
Out of
mentioned that
reverence, out of the
exactly.
inspiration that they got from Valmiki Ramayana story itself. है ना?
Right, right.
Sure.
And just as I said, the version of Valmiki being recorded probably came just to illustrate that with right devotion, be at feet of Lord Prabhu Ram, you can become, doesn't matter what your background is or was, you can become purest person and attain moksha. Probably something like that. Some of these sages wanted to communicate to the society, and that's why that story got built. And same is the case with some of the granthas that I have mentioned, some of the versions of Ramayana. Right, the Kamba Ramayana is very famous in South. In Maharashtra, there is Gita Ramayana, so beautiful, absolutely beautiful composition. But again, I cannot refer to that as a history book. Right, it is just a
Sure.
devotional book. Okay.
In fact, the story is so old, like I said in the beginning, and so widespread across the globe that at least in very nearest neighborhood, Southeast Asian countries and even towards the West, the story is a little distorted, but they are still widespread in their cultures in so many ways. I remember a podcast with Dr. Anita Bose a few months back. Again, she had written this wonderful book about the stories of Ramayana in different cultures, be it Thailand or Cambodia or other places. And regardless of the fact that the story is, of course, distorted and the places are maybe even the names are changed, but the essence of the story, the juice of the story, surviving for all these thousands of years in so many different cultures itself is just mind.
Yeah, absolutely. So true.
Sure. So let me just hop down to the next question I had, and it's again a very popular thing that King Dashratha, who was the father of the four brothers, lived for 60,000 years. And in fact, I had a conversation with a few people as well. I was, Googling a few facts as to even in the biblical history, they talk about certain characters living for hundreds of years. So, what is the reference of it? Did Dashratha literally live for 60,000 years? And what is mentioned in Valmiki Ramayana?
Have you stolen my deck of slides and looking at it? Because you are asking questions
No.
exactly in the same sequence that I
Okay,
have
it's
written.
again, disclaimer has already been put for the audiences.
Yeah, no,
Should I
I'm
pull
just
your slide up? Is there any
yeah, we
information
can.
hidden right there? Okay.
Yeah, let's pull the slides. So yes, there is a mention in uh, in Valmiki Ramayana where Dashrath himself says that it has been 60,000 years since I'm alive or since I was born. Now again, many people go and refer to this specific shlok in Valmiki Ramayana as an evidence that see here it is clearly documented, and you say that it is a Itihas Grantha and whatever is written in Valmiki Ramayana is true. So yes, Dasharath did live for 60,000 years, and yes, it is history book. Whatever is written in Valmiki Ramayana is true, but sometimes our interpretations go wrong. So what happens is the word sahasra is literally translated as thousand. And in most cases, that is the right interpretation. That is how the word sahasra is used. But uh, sahasra does not mean thousand. It just means large, big number, long period, things like that. So
Fair
what
enough.
happened is, yeah, so when Dashrath said that it has been 60,000 years since I was born, he's saying 60 years. I've lived 60 years. It is long enough time. And after 60 years, I became father. And now I'm enjoying my fatherhood. Why are you taking my son away? So that in that
Like
context,
in contemporary times, let me, throw an example of me saying somebody, you know what, I waited for you for like 5 damn years. That doesn't really mean damn years.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
called you like a bazillion times. That doesn't really literally mean that I
exactly.
called you a bazillion times. Okay.
Exactly, exactly. And in fact, I'm going slightly out of the topic that we have, but in Valmiki Ramayana itself, there is a reference of Ravan when he did the penance, the tapasya. It says that he did tapasya for 10,000 years, and every year he offered one of his heads. So, which clearly said that 10,000 means he did a huge tapasya, long tapasya for 10 years, and every year he offered one head. Right? It was not 10,000 years. It was a long period of 10 years. Right? So, 1,000 is not a literal translation as we use in today's world or in most common sense. 1,000 just means long period or a big number or large number, something like that. And
So it's used as an adjective here in the sentence.
correct, correct.
Okay.
I lived long, I waited for long period of 60 years before I became father. And again, there is one of the interesting, I would say, interpretations or context that was given that King Dashrath knew that his death will be because of separation from his kids. Right? There is a whole story of Shravan, and he accidentally killed Shravan, and his blind parents cursed Dashrath. So he knew that when I have kids, that is going to cause my death. Separation from my kids is going to cause my death. So he waited. He did not have kids for a long time because he did not want to die at early age. And at 60, at that age, he thought, okay, I have lived long enough. Now, if I give birth to kids and then enjoy my father for a few years, and then if I die, it is okay. So with that mindset, also he waited for 60 years before he had kids. And then now, as his kids were born, and Maharshi was asking to take his son to protect the yajnas, then he probably remembered that and he said, hey, I've waited 60 years for this. Please don't take him. Let me enjoy. Let me have my kids. And there were probably both aspects. It's not explicitly mentioned, but both aspects of fatherly love as well as uh, fear of death due to separation.
Interesting perspective. So what you say is Dashratha already knew because he knew about the curse. So he knew that the reason for his death will be separation from his kids. And is that why he waited long enough for to have kids? Because I remember there's another kid before all these four brothers are born, and happens to be the eldest sister of Bhagwan Ram. Is how much of truth is there to this
I've,
story?
yeah, I've heard that, but I've never seen any reference of any sister in Valmiki Ramayana.
Okay. So there is no sister mentioned, or there is no offspring of King Dashratha mentioned in Valmiki Ramayana prior to these four brothers. Is that how it
Right.
is? Okay.
Yes, at least I did not come across any such reference.
Fair enough. You also mentioned about Ravana doing all that tapa for thousands of years, but there are other references like Maharshi Vishwamitra doing the same tapasya for thousands of years. So like 1,000 years
Right.
here, 1,000 years in that position, 1,000 years in some other part of the world, in some
Correct.
other positions to get that Brahmarshi wala thing. So there is
Right.
another interesting story like
Yeah.
that too. I want to hop on to the
So
next thing really quick, or do you
yeah.
have something to say to that?
No, no. So I was just going to mention that in my understanding, it again means 1,000 means just large number. So when he did tapasya for 1,000 years, that means one full year, which is a long period, for you to stay away from everything and just do the penance for 1 year. It's a long period and do it multiple times.
Oh yes.
Yeah.
Who can think of doing something of that sort in the in today's times? किसी को, somebody's told just go do like a 10 years, take 10 years out of your life and do certain sort of tapasya. how many of us would be really willing to, give that 10 years of your very short life these days into something of this
Correct.
sort? It's also interesting. I want to hop down to the next one really quick. I see the podcast is almost half the way in, so
Okay.
and I have quite many questions already here.
Okay.
I want to talk about Ahalya, Paragji, and the normal. Again, popular narrative is that she was turned into a stone. There's another very beautiful story to that as to how that happened. And while Vishwamitra, Ramji, and Lakshmanji, approached or reached that place, that is how Ahalya got liberated. That's the narrative. So what's the true story? And introduce Ahalya to us a little.
Okay, great. So yes, the popular story is she, for lack of better words, she misbehaved, and her husband, Maharshi Gautam, he cursed Indra and Ahalya, both of them. And then the story came that Maharshi cursed her to become a stone and stay as a stone till Prabhu Ramchandra ji comes and touches that stone or touches her with his feet, and then she will again become human and kind of, as you said, all her sins will be washed and so on and so forth. But again, if we look at references in Valmiki Ramayana, in fact, I have a slide if you can share that. So it does not talk about this stone business at all. Okay. Uh, Again, I won't read that entire verse as such, but it clearly says that Ahalya knew that the person who came there appearing as Gautam was nobody but Indra. She knew it, and in spite of that, she got attracted to him, and she agreed to unite with him, which was a sinful act, right? And for that, first of all, Gautamji cursed Indra also, that he dared to do such act. And then, since willingly and knowingly Ahalya did it, he cursed uh, Ahalya also. And the curse nowhere said you will become stone. Curse just said that you will remain in isolation all by yourself, not go in the society, you will not show your face to anybody, just stay here in isolation all by yourself till Prabhu Ramchandra ji comes and he will wipe off all your sins. And then I will come and join you again and we will live life of normal sages or normal husband and wife. So that was a clear reference. Now what potentially must have happened is in some bhakti grantha, there might be a reference where sage Gautam told Ahilya, Sheela Bhava. Okay, and Sheela means Sheelavan, somebody with good character, becomes a person of good character. And that word Sheela, somebody must have misinterpreted as Sheela, which means stone. And then they might have built a story or propagated that story that okay, now you become stone and stay there. So again, sometimes in the intention of devotion, somebody must have written a good thing that he asked Allah to become person of good character, but the words that were used, they later on got misinterpreted or whatever you want to say, and then people started saying Sheila means stone and she became stone. But there is no such mention, no such reference anywhere.
It also adds divinity to his character, right? But
Absolutely. Absolutely.
but this is
And
not mentioned in Valmiki Ramayana, right?
nowhere, nowhere, not at all. They
Fair
actually,
enough.
when they were walking past Gautamji's ashram, Ramji asked the question, "What is this place? This looks like a ashram, but it looks like abandoned. What happened here?" And then the story was narrated. Then he went there. He saw Ahalya. Ahalya saw him, came and bowed down. And then again, Ramji definitely had some aura or some power which was able to wipe off sins of other people. So just by his presence, all those sins of Ahalya got wiped off.
Fair enough, sir. Fair enough. There was also a curse in this story. However, what you said was a curse from Rishi Gautama to his wife. I think it was more of a punishment you know,
Yeah.
hey, I am sort of leaving you for the time being. You know, you do all the tapa and everything, and probably liberate yourself from that sin that you mistakenly
Yeah.
committed. But however, there was also a curse to Indra too, that you know he should grow like 1,000
Yes.
testicles all over his body, something of that sort.
Right. Definitely. That's what I said. First, he cursed Indra, and then he said to Ahalya, Ahalya was his wife. Indra was kind of third person. And if she did not know, if she was cheated by his appearance, then it was okay. Then it was not her fault. But she clearly knew that it is not her husband. And in spite of that, she agreed to unite. So it was a willful act. It was not a deception as such. And that's why, and it clearly says, "Ye Varsha Sahasrani Bahuni Tvam Nivatsyasi." So, Varsha Sahasrani again means probably you will stay for an year in isolation. You will just eat air, you will not eat anything. Tapyanti Bhasma Shayini, right? So you will stay there wearing only the Bhasma. Adrishya Sarva Bhutanam does not mean she will become invisible, but means you stay in isolation. Don't go and don't mix with anybody. Don't show your face to anybody, and just stay here in this ashram for a year.
Cool, cool. It is interesting that Vishwamitra Rishi also knew about the story and, you know, pulled Ram and Lakshman on the way to Mithila to do this thing as well at the same time. There is another story that I have read or maybe watched somewhere on some YouTube video or something. I wanted to find out if that is also true. So the story goes when Indra had changed his, Rupa,
Appearance. Yeah.
and then he meets Ahalya. So there's a little conversation in between them, and it says, Ahalya says, "I recognize who you are, but because of the fact that I recognize who you are, I can't say no to you." Um, and then there's a little conversation, and this happened, and then whatever we spoke about that happened. Is that also
That's
true,
correct.
or?
Yes, that's correct. So there was a discussion between them, and she admitted that she knew who he is, and then she got attracted towards his appearance or divinity, whatever you call it. Right? The king of gods is coming to me, so it gave her a little bit of that boost in ego. That so how beautiful I am that even king of gods is coming to me.
So it was not totally her mistake. I mean, whatever punishment that she got, you know, she probably deserved it or not. I mean, that's not my forte of judgment, but she was, वो बोलते हैं ना दूध का धुला. She wasn't. She did
Yeah,
commit a mistake, knowingly that he was not her husband.
correct, correct.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Okay. Um, I'm gonna hop to the next one real quick, and it's about another almost godly woman described in Ramayana, Shabri. And the very popular anecdote is about Shabri, that she was serving in one of these ashrams in one of these jungles, and she was sort of waiting for the two brothers to come, especially Ramji to come, um, and after she could see him, she could probably leave her body or join the rishis who already had died
Right,
before. So the popular thing that she was, every day she would collect flowers and berries in the jungles in the wait of Bhagwan Sri Ram. Then he will come probably today, and then I will have fresh flowers and fruits to treat him with. So the popular thing is again that she would bite on all the berries before she would ask Bhagwan Ram to eat it
right.
because she wanted to make sure that they are tasty. How much of truth is there to this story, and what is the real story in Valmiki Ramayana?
Right. So again, we can look at the slide, but yeah, there is no such mention. There
Again,
was
okay.
definitely a mention of Prabhu Ramchandra ji to go and meet with Shabri, and Shabri was no ordinary lady. In most common discussions, you will find that she was a Bhilla caste or Bhilla Samaj lady, which means again you can say Shudra or whatever, which is again not the case. She was a disciple of Matanga Rishi, an extremely talented woman, okay, extremely learned woman, and her teacher told her before he died that your job or your purpose in life is to meet Prabhu Ramchandra ji and worship him, and then you can, you know, get liberation. You can move on to the next life or whatever, right? So there is a detailed mention about who she was and what she did, but there is no such mention at all of the popular story that she bit every berry and then made sure it is sweet and then offered to Prabhu Ramchandra ji. That is again a made up story. But all other things were true, that she was waiting for Prabhu Ramachandra ji. She knew that he is coming. Again, there is no mention of she for so many years collecting berries and flowers every day, even though she knew. When they came, she offered nice flowers and worships and food to them, including berries or fruits, whatever, right? But it's not that she bit on every berry and tested it and made sure that it is sweet and not sour and then offered. That is again a made up story, again, probably to demonstrate the devotion.
Sure, sure. And could you also please tell for me and the audience too, as to what was the purpose of Bhagwan Ram and Lakshmanji to reach and meet Shabari? How did they know about her? Why did they go to her?
Okay, so that will be slight digression, but at a very high level, when they killed Kabandha, Kabandha was guiding them where they should go and what they should do to search Sita Mata. And in that description or in that direction, he mentioned that there is a female sage called Shabari, and she is performing all the duties and all the holy actions. So on your way, please visit her. So that was told to
Okay.
Prabhu Ramchandra ji by Kabandha.
Okay, so this discussion basically happens when Kabanda is killed, and
Right,
uh, and then he says, because I am not the real Rakshasa, I am somebody else, and I'm going to give you the hint as to
right,
what is going to serve your purpose, which is Sugriva. But before you know where he is, you got to go meet this woman. Is that how is the
right.
sequence of events?
Yes,
Okay.
yes, yeah,
Got you. Now I remember. Okay. So that is what Shabari is. Now, this subject that I'm picking up right now is again very important, and because of the fact that Lakshman Rekha again is doesn't really find any mention in Valmiki Ramayana, but then there are so many popular stories and then morals from those stories coming up as to why what is a Lakshman Rekha, why somebody should cross that rekha and everything. Please introduce Lakshman Rekha to us, Bharatji, and tell me why it got distorted, when it got added in, from where this context
great,
arose.
great. And not just a story, but as you rightly said, it has become so popular phrase. Lakshman Rekha has become a popular phrase that it's a hard boundary that one should never cross. Right? It indicates
We
in that
derive meaningful logics from the story too. Although
right.
the fact is this story is not there at all in Valmiki Ramayana. So where did it come from?
Right. So again, in Valmiki Ramayana, there is no such mention, and there was no magical power where within this boundary nobody can enter, and if she crosses that boundary, then Ravan can abduct her or kidnap her. So the story was very straightforward. And again, as I mentioned the story, I want to put a disclaimer that my intention is not to hurt anybody's feelings or devotion towards Sita Mata. But there are certain things that happened during this episode which were not most wise things, so to say, for Sita to do or say. And we will talk about that. So when
Sure.
Prabhu Ramchandra ji went to capture Marich, who appeared in the form of a golden deer, and Sita Mata wanted that deer to have it as a pet. It was very beautiful. And then Marich was somebody who could deceive people by changing his voice, changing his appearance, and so on and so forth. So when he ran away and Prabhu Ramchandra ji was chasing him, when they went far enough, he started screaming in Ramchandraji's voice asking for help. And if you can again fire the slide, uh, when Sita Mata and Lakshman heard that voice, Lakshman was very calm and very confident that this is something fake. This is somebody imitating Ramchandraji's voice. Nobody can harm him. Nobody can forget about destroying. Nobody can even harm him. He was absolutely confident. But being a wife, Sita was very worried. And she was forcing Lakshman to go and help Ramji. And Lakshman refused. Lakshman tried to convince her, tried to explain her that it is not possible for anybody to harm Ramji. Don't worry about it. But what forced him to leave Sita alone is the next things that she said. She said that you want your brother to die, so you want to enjoy me. You want to get hold of me, and those are your evil intentions. Because of that, you are not leaving me and going to save your own brother. And that was very, very disturbing, and kind of it hurt. It did hurt Lakshman quite a lot, because there are very clear references. Lakshman was so pure and so respectful of Sita that he has never seen Sita above her feet. So whenever he looked at Sita, he only looked at her feet. He did not know, he did not ever look at her rest of the body. He was so pure and so uh, respectful of Sita. So when she said things like that you have evil intentions of getting hold of me and whatever, that was very, very disturbing. And at that point, he could not take it and he had to leave. And that is when he left, and he just left. I mean, he just, of course, told her to be safe and take care of herself. uh, Tried to convince her many, many times that this is not required, Ram is capable, but she did not listen. And with such allegations, then he kind of got frustrated and hurt, and then he went to look for Ram and, so to say, help him. But there is no such Lakshman Rekha that don't cross this line, otherwise you are not safe. And then while giving bhiksha to Ravan, she accidentally stepped out. All that is made up story. Ravan did not come as a sadhu or anything. He just came and abducted her.
So this story is also so there is no Lakshman Rekha. Do you have any idea? Would you want to say where it got added to the
No,
real?
honestly, I don't know which Ramayana introduced that first time. It is there in all the, so to say, Bhakti Ramayans, but I don't know which one introduced it for the first time.
This is again quite a popular story, and I had to bring this thing up.
Yeah, yeah,
So so that's how it is. There is a lot of talk about the Nala Setu, which is also famously known as a Ram Setu. There's, I think, there's a movie which has been made on that or already released. I don't know. There was a Discovery documentary on that. There are tons of things which is said, written, and spoken about Nala Setu or Rama Setu. Even in Mahabharata, there is a mention of that. In recent times, we call it Adam's Bridge or whatever.
yeah.
What is Ramayana telling about the Ram Setu? How was it built? And is there any way possible that an army of mindless, senseless monkeys can build such a wonderful engineering marvel in those times?
Awesome. So that is actually probably last topic that I wanted to talk about, unless there is any other discussion. But it is very
There
interesting.
are a
So
few.
first thing
There
is,
are a few lists in the list.
oh,
Added
you have
already,
more.
but so I'm not
Okay.
letting you go right after this.
Okay. Okay. So yeah. So recently, I heard a debate that we should not call it Ram Setu. We should call it Nala Setu because Nala built it. Nala was a Vanar, and he was an architect who designed the whole concept of how this bridge can be built, and he was instrumental. And Ramji was obviously just observing. But that argument is very foolish. And today, for example, I live in US. I'll just give an example. When we say Trump Tower, we say it was built by Trump, Donald Trump. But do you think Donald Trump literally picked up bricks and laid the bricks to build a tower? No. It was his desire. He wanted it to be built, and somebody else architected it, somebody else constructed it, somebody else decorated it, and so on and so forth. But it was for him, so it got his name. Same thing, Nala Setu, you call it, yeah, you call it whatever name you want to call, that's fine. But it was built for Ram's purpose. So it is called Rama Setu. That is one important thing. The second thing you mentioned, and I'm honestly not going to get into that topic because it's a very big topic by itself, how monkeys could build it. So as far as, if you open-mindedly study
So
Ramayana,
Paraji, I'm playing the devil's advocate right here. Okay,
yeah,
I've read the real Ramayana, but I still want to, because this is a popular thing. How could a bunch of monkeys, senseless, just make such a beautiful man? Matlab, it's almost impossible for people to imagine, especially Westerners, when they think about those periods of time. Their understanding of this part of the world was, people didn't have. No civilization, no agriculture, nothing was really present in this
right.
part of the world. Now imagining monkeys doing the same thing in that period of time in Bharatvarsha, it's like in something just blows anybody's mind, right? So
Yeah.
I'm playing the devil's advocate. Cool.
Right, right. I completely understand. And it's good because then that raises some of the common concerns most of our audience might have. So I'm just going to make one statement here in the context and move on without spending much time on that statement. Not because I cannot, but because of, in the interest of time. So when we say all these Hanuman as well as Sugriv as well as Nala and all these people, they were monkeys. There is no mention of them being monkeys. Okay, the word for monkey is markata. There is no mention of markata unless there was somebody teasing or making fun of them or some looking down upon them. The word used everywhere is vanara or kapi. Okay, so vanara does not necessarily mean monkey. Vanara means any forest being, forest creature. And these communities, what we call Vanar or what is mentioned in Ramayana, those were forest living communities. So you can call that something like a tribe. And tribes have their own traditions. So there was probably a tradition of these monkey tribes wearing monkey mask and doing some monkey kind of appearances. And that is why they were called Vanara. There is a reference in Ramayana, again, I'm digressing, I should not, but when Hanuman met Ramji first time, Sugriv told him to keep away his Vanara avatar or Vanar appearance away and go as a normal person. So probably it meant just take out your mask and tail and stuff like that, the other costume, so to say, that you are wearing, which is traditional to our community or our group. Just keep that away and go as a in your normal appearance. But with that said, it is my understanding and my belief, based on how I've read different parts of Ramayana, that Vanars were not monkeys; those were humans. Of a monkey tribe, probably you can call it as a monkey tribe. But if you go to the slide, there is again mentioned that in common stories that people or these monkeys were throwing stones in the ocean, and those stones were sinking. So they started writing Ramji's name on that, and as
Oh
soon
yeah,
as they
true.
wrote Ramji's name, then those stones started floating, which is very illogical. Right? There is also a story of a squirrel coming and helping in building that building of that bridge. Now again, it's probably some devotional aspect somebody introduced here, that no matter how small you are not insignificant. You can contribute to a bigger cause, even if you are small, or whatever you are, right? So that was probably the message in the story of the squirrel. And stones floating is again probably the message about devotion and belief and so on. But in Ramayana, it is clearly mentioned that they used not just stones, but as the stones were sinking, they used huge trees. So what they must have done is they tied all these, and they did actually. They did tie tree trunks together. Those were floating. But obviously, if they just tied trunks, then they will float away with the ocean. So they probably tied some heavy stones to make them little stable. So it is a combination of stones and tree trunks that were used to form or build that bridge. And obviously, over a period of time, over so many years, the tree itself will decay and or maybe float away and the stones sank further down. And that is what we see today as evidence, what we call it as Ramasetu. But it was never built with stones that started floating magically, or, a squirrel came and helped, or all those things are kind of made up stories. But there is a clear description of
There,
how stones and trees were used.
sure. There's another side story to that squirrel story is that stripes, those stripes that you see on the back of the squirrel is probably some sort of imprint of Bhagwan Ram's
Yeah,
fingers.
yeah,
That's another side story
yeah.
to it. I wanted to bring this thing up. Now, interesting when you mentioned about Nala Setu also. I had a conversation with Jeevan Rao the other day. In I think the first podcast that I had with him, we were talking about the location of Lanka, Ravana's Lanka, and so it suggests that Sri Lanka that we know today in tracings, wasn't the Ravana's Lanka of those times, and it happens to be somewhere towards the west of it, southwest of it. So if that is true, then what is this Adams Bridge or Nala Setu that we know in today's time? Uh, why did that exist? Number one.
So,
Number two, I remember I had gone to Dhanushkodi. This is right at the tip of the southern borders of India, where tsunami had come a few years back also. So there is a temple which still survives and which holds this stone. This is like this bigger stone, and it is kept in the water just to show the people that there is a stone which still floats. I wanted to bring this thing in as well because there is a possibility that um, there was that particular stone was available and that was probably used in building the bridge as well.
yeah, so the first part that you said, I have read and heard some discussions, and these are not, people who are just making random statements that Sri Lanka that we know today is probably not Ravan's Lanka. They have done their own study. They have taken all the references that are available in Ramayana about location of Lanka, how it was described, in which direction it was described. In general, it was south of India, south from Bharat, but where exactly? South is like, entire ocean. So they interpreted some of the references and came up with potential right location for Lanka, which does not exist today. But again, those are their, I would say, speculations. They have not found any concrete evidence of either ways, whether this was true Lanka or this was not true Lanka and the true Ravan's Lanka was somewhere else. Those are their speculations, and definitely with more study, we will find out what exactly was the real thing that happened or where the Lanka was.
Since I am not a scholar myself and I don't do all these diggings and archaeological finds and stuff, I would, or anybody like me would rely on the papers written on these subjects, right? So
Correct, yes.
a section of these scholars would say that this bridge that exists today uh, is proven to be man-made, and then there is another section, there's other sort of scholars who would say no, it seems like very natural, there is nothing man-made in it. So who knows if this is the real bridge that we sort of talk about in Ramayana times? Who knows it's not? But again, since our belief, and not ours, crores and millions of people do believe that this is something which is the reminiscence of the ancient past of Hindu history, we revere it so much still. We
Right.
know
Exactly.
Rameshwaram also. So it's about the belief. I won't elongate this thing anyway and won't stretch this. Ravana ke bare mein bhi there is another popular story that after the Ram Ravan Yuddha, when Ramji killed Ravan, he was just about to die, and there's a story that says Ramji asked Lakshman to go to Ravan and take some gyan tips the juice of his life, his wisdom, before he dies. How much of that is true, and does that find any mention in
Interesting.
Valmiki Ramayana?
Interesting. Yeah. So again, that was not the topic that I had put in slide at least, but doesn't matter. So what you're saying is right. There is a very popular story, um, but again, in Valmiki Ramayana, there is no such reference. Okay, and it might have again come from teaching some good principles to people. That even if somebody is your enemy, he or she might have some good attributes or some good knowledge, and you should not undermine that. Just because he is your enemy or just because he misbehaved in one aspect does not mean he or she is completely bad person. There might be some other qualities or attributes that we should respect and learn from. That probably was the message somebody wanted to give and build this story. But there is no such mention in Valmiki Ramayana about Ramji asking Lakshmanji to go and learn something from Ravan. Obviously, there are lot of references and lot of literature available about Ravan that he definitely was very, very talented person. Um, of course, with evil tendencies, right? Some wrong tendencies. But yeah, there is no reference of Ram asking Lakshmanji to learn from him.
Again, the moral of the story is that in the beginning, that even if you got to learn something from the enemy who is as brutal and as a Ravan, there is no shame in doing it. You must do it. That's the moral of the story. So,
Right.
when I ask my own questions, I'm sort of looking for answers in also. I'm looking at as to why would so many stories just added up to this main stem of the Ramayana story, right? There's so many branches coming from here and there, and everything also comes with a moral. So when I ask myself why are there so many stories loaded up or attached to the main trunk of the Ramayana story? I'm thinking maybe in ancient India, the knowledge itself was sort of wrapped in story form. Um, so the moral that we getting out of it is what you just said. So if it's been taught to somebody in a story form, it will be easy for them to remember and grasp the
Correct.
juice of the knowledge. And now if you attach it or link it with the main trunk of the Ramayana story, it becomes even more important for somebody to give it more importance. Oh, it's Ramayana mein ye bhi hua. So if somebody like Ram and Lakshman can do it, it's obviously it it,
Right
it just
thing or
gets
important
more
thing.
validation. Is
Right.
what is your take on it as to why do you think
Yeah,
this so many stories just get got added up to the real trunk?
right, right. No, I agree with you that, if I want to teach some value, if I put it in some story, it is easy for many common people to understand. And if I attach it to some widely accepted and respected text, then it becomes even more acceptable, right? So that might be the intention, and it or also it can be Yuvrajji, just a devotion. Like I'm a devotee of Prabhu Ramji, and or I'm taking a completely wrong example, but just to make the point, I like Urban Pandit channel, right? So if I'm talking to my friends, I might just exaggerate something. I might say, "Oh, it is so wonderful. You can find any information about our history or our scriptures. Anything, any doubt you have, just go to Urban Pandit channel." So then those kind of exaggerations also are likely. Devotion is part of it. Teaching some principles and values of part is part of it. So it's combination of multiple aspects that led to build up of these stories.
And also validating these narratives as so the narrative that comes out of this particular story is you should learn from even your enemy.
Right.
And because of the fact now this story is linked to Ramayana, it finds more validation, like
Right.
retweeted by so many verified handles as a karke some that sort.
Right. Right. If I say learn from your enemy, people will say, why should I learn from enemy? Hey, look, man, even Lakshmanji learned from his enemy. Oh, now it suddenly becomes acceptable. So those aspects are likely to
Gotcha.
be there. Yeah.
Fair enough. And I do have another question post which I'm gonna end the show for the day.
Sure.
Uh, and which is again, which was very popular again, couple of months back. It was running all over the internet as to, how and why Shambuka was killed by Lord Rama, because just because of the fact was, he was not from the upper three varnas, or because of the fact that he was Shudra, he was killed, he was doing a penance. So the story goes like, we all know that in Ram Rajya, and Ram Rajya itself is defined as one of those times where nobody got sick, nobody died, in the young age, nobody died of famine. It was dharma all over, and everything that you could sort of imagine going in a right way was happening in Ram Rajya. That was the epitome of governance. That is how we sort of know it. So the story goes, one day, a young boy in his city dies, and the father comes to the king, who is Ramji, with this complaint that my son died. I'm sure there must be something which is going on in your empire or by you, that this unfortunate event happened in my family. So it's your responsibility as a king to go find out and fix that up. So I leave the story till here, and I want you to start as to why that happened, how the story panned out, and was Ramji the reason behind why Ramji killed this guy Shambuka? Was that because of the fact that he was only a Shudra and doing a penance, or what was the real reason behind it?
Right. So again, I'll have to recollect that entire story honestly, but it is definitely in entire description or entire literature of Ramayana, there is no discriminative behavior anywhere. Like just now we talked about Shabari being, so to say, in common description, she was Adivasi or whatever you call it, right? Dalit or Achut, what different things people call it. But Ramji never had any trouble going to her and accepting food that she offered, right? And there are multiple such stories. So I don't see any possibility and definitely any mention of Ramji killing somebody just because he was of certain varna. Again, as I honestly said, I don't recollect that entire story. I'll have to read it again and come with the findings. But there must be something Ramji found that he misbehaved or he did wrong, for which death was the only right penalty, and that's why he killed him.
Fair enough. Okay, so um, in the most popular narrative or the version of it, Ramji is described as somebody who, in his empire, couldn't tolerate some Shudra doing tapasya. Okay, so if that is the narrative, and let's just say if we just don't know the answer to why he really killed that boy, but do we have any other examples wherein we know that in his empire or during his times, people from all the varnas had access to spirituality or doing tapasya or doing penance? Did other people, all the varna people, do it, or was that just restricted to upper varnas? So if
So,
we are able to answer this question, I think we would sort of cover up this one
right.
as well.
So just a quick example of Vishwamitraji himself. Right? He himself was a Kshatriya. He wanted to become Brahmin. So he had to do penance of many years to achieve that Brahmin stage. Because back then, Yuvrajji, the Varna was not purely based on birth. It was really based on Guna Karma, right? So if you're not qualified a Brahmin through your knowledge and actions, not by birth. If you're not qualified to be a Brahmin through your knowledge, uh, dedication, penance, and so on, then you should not perform certain acts, and that can potentially be a punishable act because you don't know what you're doing. And if you don't know what you're doing, the results can be very, very destructive for the entire society. And there might be examples of why non-Brahmins were not allowed to perform certain kind of yajna. But that is not discriminative. Today, will you allow a small kid to run around with a machine gun or a revolver? No. Is that because you're discriminating against adults and versus child? No, because the child does not have knowledge of how to operate that weapon in right manner, right? So the context or the thinking was something similar. That if you are qualified, learn everything properly. Nobody is stopping you from learning everything properly. But if you are not graduated, so to say, to certain level, you should not take relevant or corresponding actions. That was the context. And that was not just in Ramayana, but that was very common in ancient times. Even there are many examples where a teacher will give only selective knowledge to his student based on his aptitude and based on his qualities and attributes. So they will not give entire knowledge to every single person. If they don't think he's a mature enough to or she is mature enough to handle that knowledge or wisely use that knowledge, they would not give that knowledge to that student.
Can we safely say they were more of a merit-based civilization?
Correct. That's a good term or a right term that you used. Yes.
Interesting. Gives me so many new perspectives to sort of think on that. Thank you so much, Paragji, for giving your time and so much of wisdom. It was really nice talking to you about these particular subjects. It's great to sort of discuss these nuances and stories which sort of don't find mention in the real story, but still some or the other way there are a few of them which come with good morals. So even if that those stories, some of these stories are not a part of the real story, but it is loaded with so many meanings and things for us. So
Correct.
yeah, thank you so much
Correct.
for giving your time. Before I land this plane again or close the show, I would rather have you have the last word, please.
Sure. So the last word is again, I want to appreciate and thank you for hosting me and hosting this topic, which sometimes people are scared of hosting such topics because they think that I will hurt somebody's feelings, somebody's devotion, somebody's emotions, and so on and so forth. So sometimes hosting such shows it's little bold activity, right? So I appreciate you hosting it. I appreciate you contributing to from your side, and I'm sure our audience enjoyed and learned few things. Again, the intention was not to say that these stories are bad, these made-up stories. They, as you rightly said, they probably have some meaning or some message behind it, but it is just an attempt to show that those were not part of original text. So
Absolutely.
that
The
once
pleasure
again,
was all
thank you,
mine,
everyone.
Paragji. No, no,
Absolutely.
it was totally my pleasure. And I tell you why, because, um, you brought out this point that people may get offended or something. Unless you talk about certain things, how do you expect to explore the depth of, the story? How would you really bring out the truth from it? So, regardless of the fact I said in the beginning, if you're read the Valmiki Ramayana or multiple versions of Ramayana, or it inside out, or even if you heard or watched the story here and from here and there, multiple sources, this is for all the people, this particular podcast, who have an open mind, and regardless if you have read or not. So thank you
Right.
so much, Paragji, for giving this time, and I sincerely hope the audience is also going to like this conversation. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Have a
Have a
great
good one,
rest
and
of the
Jai Shri
evening.
Ram.
Thank you. Jai Shri Ram.
Jai Shri Ram. I hope you liked this conversation. If you did, I sincerely hope also that you are subscribed to the channel. If you're not, do subscribe it right now. Share the video with your people in case if you like this one. Um, I will see you in the next podcast. Till then, Jai Shri Ram, and have a good one, you all. Bye.